Audio Jungle.
Here. So yeah, super excited to have you.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yes, so with Hausla, we basically work towards developing self-esteem and self-worth among individuals, and our major target remain to be adolescent children and also women in specific, irrespective of any age, and there's no boundary. So it's basically a secular program. But as most of us are from Shia community, and we see that there are a lot of taboo in our community with regards to mental health and self-esteem and standing up for each other. So, and mostly just last year, 2 years ago, when COVID has literally hit us, we've started a virtual platform wherein we've got people have joined us from Pakistan, Bangladesh. We also have one of our clients from Tanzania. So we were able to serve a lot of people with Urdu background, like who were based in Bangladesh, Nepal, India, and Pakistan. So we were able to connect that way, and it's a very tiny project. We are just moving forward with help of word of mouth. We haven't been a big thing yet, but we are trying to help genuinely as much as possible.
You're familiar with what the word Hausla actually means, but Hausla, it's an Urdu word or a Hindi word.
Urdu word.
Yeah, so according to my literary knowledge, what Hausla means is like support. So it's like, for example, it's like Hausla karna or Hausla karo. It's like
it's courage. The literal meaning of Hausla is courage, and the full name is Hausla Haq Bayanee Ka. So courage to stand with the truth for the truth.
Nice.
Like that.
So, Assalamu alaikum. Today we have with Hausla today, we have Sister Rebecca Masterton. Sister Rebecca Masterton has a host of different experiences under her belt regarding a number of different areas of expertise, including Shia studies, including cultural studies, and also exploring the role of women across different cultures and religions. Sister Rebecca, I would love for you to introduce yourself actually. What is your background? What do you kind of work in, and what area are you passionate about?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad, and thank you so much for this invitation. So I converted to Islam 20 years ago, and my background is secular, Protestant, Scots-Irish background. I did a degree in Japanese language and culture. I did my master's in East Asian and African literature, and I did my doctorate in Islamic literature of West Africa, where I looked at some Fulani spiritual texts and compared those with some of the spiritual texts that you find in the Islamic tradition. I have been senior lecturer at the Islamic College in London and also taught at Birkbeck College, University of London as well. I have presented for different channels such as Sahar TV, Press TV, and Ahlul Bayt TV. So yes, I started teaching at the Islamic College in London in 2001, just after 9/11, and then I left for a few years to finish my doctorate, and then I went back to teach on the BA and Master's program in Islamic spirituality, and that is my primary interest. I came into Islam largely because I feel that there's a whole dimension of the human being that's missing in the culture that we have today, the secular, westernized culture that we have today. And so when I traveled to different Muslim countries and I found the remnants of an Islamic tradition, I found that there was still a preservation of a different way of being human, different way of being a human being. And I felt it was very, very overwhelming because I had felt in the UK always a struggle against the culture, always a struggle to find my place in it, because I wasn't really, the mainstream culture didn't really make sense to me. Like, what's the point of doing all this? Is this really like the point of our existence? So when I discovered Islam, it was great gift, and it made sense to me. It was like a matching of how I felt about the human being's place in the universe, with my own feeling of why we are here. And so I haven't looked back. Yes, it's been a very busy 20 years ever since then.
Wow, that's so. From that, I think one of the things that I want to really talk about is you've obviously worked in various different kinds of environments. As a woman, what has your experience kind of been like? So both in Islamic and non-Islamic contexts, and specifically, what do you think is really important for us to remember and women to remember? Keeping in mind, obviously, the cultures that we're now in, where there's a lot of conversation about equality or equity or womanism, feminism, diversity, all of these things. So what are just some things that you think are important for women to think about?
Obviously, it's a very wide issue and complex as well. So if you say one thing, it can sound like you're saying no to a whole lot of other things. And in, again, a secular Western culture, some Muslim women, they argue that they've been treated with greater courtesy by Western men than they have by Muslim men. And I would say my experience is different. These Muslim women are Muslim women, so they may not have been approached by these Western men in a way that a Western woman might have been approached.
Sure.
So there's a very intense commodification of women in a Western culture. There's a very aggressive psychological push from when girls are young, the age of 12 or 13, to be acceptable, to exploit their image, to pursue physical beauty. Companies obviously will hire for the girl on their front desk, and it will be a young woman. They will hire one who has, for her looks, and they want to have a nice looking girl so when someone's coming in the company door, they're going to see a nice looking girl. And you can pretty much just, especially girls in their 20s, just be approached left, right, and centre. They're just seen as there to be approached. And when I converted to Islam, I left all that behind, and alhamdulillah. But otherwise, you're basically just seen as anyone is entitled to just approach you. And a few years ago, I was teaching a non-Muslim young woman, aged about 20. I was her private tutor in religious studies. And she didn't like going out in public in the city, but there was one time when she went out in public, and she was quite pretty, quite attractive, and she got approached. She got harassed. And and I was thinking to myself, okay, that's interesting, because that's like 15 years since I converted. Yeah. And she's around the age that I was when I converted. And it sounds to me like nothing's changed. Since I converted, nothing's changed. Like, you will go out there and you're going to get harassed. Like, that's just how it is. So, yeah. And I know this happens to Muslim women by Muslim men, but I would say that the difference is that what I found personally, it might not be correct, but what I found personally was that I literally learned from Islam, that I am entitled to say no, to put up a barrier. I don't have to humour somebody, I don't have to accommodate them, I don't have to tolerate their approaches to me. I am entitled to say no. Maybe not a lot of Muslim women actually know that. They don't know the extent to which they're entitled to keep their dignity and to not tolerate harassment. But when it actually comes to the rules of Islam, there are more rules in Islam about how a man should behave with a woman than there is in a secular Western society. And although now things have changed in Western society, where I think it's going to the other extreme now, where, like we see with the Me Too movement and so on. So we've got kind of all sorts of strange extremes going on in the society. But what I found overall was that Islam teaches women about their dignity, maintaining your dignity, and at least you have, if a man is interested in you, he has to marry you. I mean, he has to take responsibility for looking after you, looking after his children. He can't just have a nice time with you and walk away. I know that happens in practice, but according to the rules of Islam, that's what, the man is supposed to have some responsibilities. So, but culturally, yes, there are issues. Again, we've got two extremes. We've got kind of the over exploitation of girls in Western society, where it's literally, you're out there on the street, like when you're 18, you leave home, that's it, it's you and the world.
Yeah.
You don't really have, you don't have your family around you, you don't have your brothers around you, your father around you. That's not the culture. You're out there on your own with things by yourself. And then we've got the other extreme, where, of course, some young women, girls and young women in Muslim cultures are maybe not allowed to do things that they might be allowed to do Islamically. And so because they naturally want to do, get certain types of education, maybe do art or travel for educational purposes, which is allowed in Islam, and their families are saying no, and they're not allowing them to do things that they are allowed to do Islamically, then what they are doing is they're turning to this very aggressive, atheistic feminism that's being pushed by the West, and they're turning to that for their answers. But actually, there's a hidden agenda behind the so-called liberation of Muslim women coming from the West. And that agenda is the same agenda that was put out there towards Western women. And so behind the agenda of, we want to liberate you and you're entitled to go out to work and earn your own living and so on, actually the hidden agenda is that we need to boost the economy. And I heard an economist, actually I think it was, it's a philosopher called Karen Strawn. So her videos are on YouTube. She has some very interesting things to say about some of the fallacies in Western feminism. But she said that with women entering the workforce, the economies have been boosted massively in the last 20, 30 years. Right. So women are generally on lower pay, as we know, but they've done a huge amount to boost their country's economy.
Yep.
And so it's not about, you're entitled to be a CEO. No, it's like, we want you to be a CEO. We want you away from your kids, away from your home, working for the state or working for corporations, because we want to boost our economy. We don't care about your children. If your children, age 7, 8, 9, are left at home needing you emotionally, but you're not around, we don't care about that. And so what's happening in the West is that there's starting to be a sea change with women who are the daughters of feminists. So the feminists of the 70s and 80s, their daughters who were told, you can have it all, that used to be a phrase, in the West and in the women's magazines, always on the front, you can have it all. They're discovering, actually, I'm getting really exhausted trying to have it all. I'm going crazy trying to balance everything. And so a lot of Western women are now turning against this very intensive corporatization of women. And they're saying, actually, it's okay to be a mother.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, in Western society, there's still like this in Sweden. I've got a friend who lives in Sweden. Being a mother is seen as, really like you're just you're a low-level servant. You're a low-level slave. The status of a mother in Western secular society is very, very low. And this is something that when I came to Islam, I was like, oh, wow. Mothers have some kind of a status, at least in theory, if not in practice. Yeah. Theoretically, the woman as a mother has a high status. And I felt that this is what was missing. In Western society, we have the status of the mother is missing, and the woman as a spiritual being is missing. There is a spirituality in Islam that is completely, it's absent in the Western society.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think I've lost my train of where I was going here. But in terms of talking about, any women who may be listening to this, I would just say, yes, there may be things that need to be fixed in your family, in your community, and in your culture. Without a doubt, I would 100% agree that things need to be fixed in Muslim communities. At the same time, don't be fooled by this message that's going out there that what is going to save you is this very aggressive form of feminism and corporatism that's being good, and that's telling you you're going to be free, but actually you're just going to be working for a male boss who's going to be ordering you around in the office. You're still going to be humiliated in the office, because I've seen that with my own eyes. I mean, I've worked in companies too in my 20s, and you're not necessarily given your dignity when you're working for a bunch of men in the office. So, and children are suffering with their mothers not being at home. There's an emotional disconnect. So we've now got generations of children who are emotionally disconnected. They're just in their own world, and then they get addicted to video games. They get addicted to, food, all kinds of unhealthy things. And then their mothers are saying, "What can I do about my son because he's addicted to video games?" And it's like, well, he's filling an emotional hole that was not filled because you weren't around. So, yeah, there's a lot that could be said about that. It's difficult. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying women should stay at home and not work. What I would say is the economy needs to be changed. The structure of the economy needs to be changed, because women are trying to compete in an economy that has been built for men. So it's seen as an achievement when, I've achieved what all of these men have achieved. But you've lost out as a woman, because it's not structured for you. We've got women who've just given birth. They have to rush back to work within a few weeks. They should be breastfeeding. And it's like, well, I can't breastfeed my child because I'm having to sit here in a meeting that's talking about stats.
Yeah,
and
there's a result of that as well, right? Like having to, so for example, like, having to, like a lot of things now about like freezing your eggs and having to postpone that whole thing so that you can concentrate on careers and which is
Well, by the way, freezing your eggs is no guarantee. That's another myth that, I'll freeze my eggs when I'm 25, and then when I'm 35, I'll unfreeze them and I'll have 2 children. Actually, what they're finding statistically is that there's no guarantee that those eggs are going to conceive a child. They're finding there's a very low rate of conception. So women are spending maybe thousands on freezing their eggs. They get to 35, and when they're ready finally, and they're finding that those eggs are no good anymore.
Yeah.
So that's something else they need to consider. Yeah.
All right. So how would you say that? Okay. So as you know, Hausla works with a lot of different women. And is my audio okay? Is my internet okay?
Oh, it's fine. Maybe the camera's freezing a little bit, but the audio's okay. Yeah.
All right. Cool. As you know, we work, and you've already spoken a little bit about this, is about like single women, and we work a lot with single women and women who have escaped or left abusive households or, abusive relationships and things like that. From your studies in not just Islam, from your studies across all of the different cultures, what I guess I don't want to say asking for advice, but basically, you mentioned a lot about hope at the beginning, about spirituality and hope, and it's one of your areas of expertise as well. Are there any elements, or are there any specific areas of just anything that you think would be helpful for them, or anything that helpful for them to remember, or things like that? Sorry, I'm not very eloquent right now, but yeah.
That's fine. So, yes, I mean, my own mother was a single parent, and because my father left for another woman, and my mum was devastated. We were all devastated. So I have grown up with a single parent, and I've seen the stress that a woman goes through when she's trying to raise her children, the social difficulties where she's seen as a potential threat to other marriages because she's a single woman. So she gets isolated by other women who feel threatened by her. There's a lot of issues, very, very difficult issues related to that. And my mother, although she was a Muslim, she was a great example of how to rebuild your life. She learned to, she studied about building your self-esteem, and she took up a career. She trained as a photographer. She brought out 3 books of her own photography. She always maintained her grace. You know, she never became bitter. And I think that's a useful lesson that maybe I was raised with, not to be bitter about what has happened to you. And so, I mean, another thing is that women need to be educated in personality types. So if marriages are falling apart, I mean, masculinity is in crisis as well at the moment in the 21st century. Men are in crisis. There are a whole range of personality disorders that are only just now coming to light. So both women need to study different kinds of personalities before they get into a marriage, because they're going into marriages young without any experience of different personality types and how they may be manipulated. So the whole family, not just the women, their whole family needs to be educated on personality types. And it's not enough just to say, mashallah, he prays, he fasts, very good, let's get her married to him. We need to dig a little deeper. And there needs to be a lot of education on it. But there is hope. There's hope in rebuilding yourself. If you educate yourself, then your children benefit as well.
Yeah. Oh, all right. Okay. So that was a very, very insightful session for me, and I think we've crossed the half an hour mark.
So, Rehab, there's something that I would want to really talk about and appreciate both of you for raising up such important issues and topics. So most of the cases that we take up are women-centric cases. There are women clients who are with us. So there are many of them who've been from a very abusive relationship a lot of times. Then there are many who are who doesn't have support from their parents. So there are a lot of families where the families disown them. They warn them that they'll disown them, and they also warn them that they'll commit attempt to commit suicide if the girl's not going to listen to them, or she's gonna come back, or she's gonna try to stand up for her rights or her children's rights. It's just in the name of religion. And I don't really think our religion teaches us this. Just saying we are of certain religion, are from a culture or a certain community. So this is something I really appreciate. I would want you to specify this so that other women prioritize their education and they come up and speak for themselves, and by feeling that it's right, not a crime, right?
Yes, obviously having been involved in Shia communities from different cultures, even over in the West, I'm aware of some of this, a lot of the cultural issues, especially like in the South Asian communities, India, Pakistan, and how especially emotional blackmail is used to control family members in the name of religion. And perhaps we would really even need a whole separate session on how emotional blackmail is used to control family members. This is also going on in the West, and the effect that this is happening in the West is that the young people are leaving their families because they have the support of the state, or they've got their education, they've got some kind of economic independence, they're walking away from this kind of treatment. Not to say it doesn't hurt, though, that they'll be made to feel guilty for not having towed the line. And this is a very, very big topic that needs to be gone into in more depth. It's not just about women getting educated and speaking up for themselves, but it's also understanding family dynamics and how power is maintained within the families. I mean, there's all these ideas about...
There are still people who are not able to escape it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's this whole thing about honor and shame and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of mess and confusion between what is Islamic and what is within the culture as well. And I know from experience, from having spoken to families that are not happy with what their daughters are doing, and they want me to speak to their daughters. When I have tried to address the families and said, look, it's not just the issue, is not just your daughter, the issue is with you as well. You have to look at this as a family holistically and understand things from your daughter's perspective as well. 99% of the time, they don't want to listen. 99% of the time, it's like, no, we are right, she is wrong. In fact, they will even stop communicating with me. If I try to politely suggest to them that it's how you see it is not how it is. You need to understand things from a broader perspective and understand your daughter's perspective as well. They will not answer my message. They don't want to know. They don't want to hear it from me. So yes, I mean, obviously this is a widespread issue that, like I said, we would need probably many, many sessions on this to talk about this, especially.
Yeah. So sorry, I thought you finished.
No, I was just going to say to help people understand family dynamics and how to help them to deal with that. Yeah.
Right. So I was just I wanted you to ask those things, like, from a perspective of, for example, if I'm a person in question, right, I'm going through a hard time or a tough phase of my life, then how do I choose? Like, this is out there, this is for everybody out there, boys, girls, everybody. So if you are somebody who's been suppressed by a lot of issues and you feel helpless and you have to make a decision that's hard enough, and which is against the society or against the cultural norms that you've been all your life. So how are you going to choose what's right and what's wrong? How are you going to put yourself in a situation where you'll have a satisfaction? You'll not be guilty of doing something good for yourself, choosing something better for yourself. So, yeah.
It's not easy because obviously I had to do that coming into Islam. So I saw my mother in tears. I had my mother in tears down the phone because I had started to wear hijab. And obviously, you don't want to hurt your parent. You don't want to hurt anybody. When you say, my conscience is telling me this is the path I have to take, this is the correct path, right, and everybody's upset with you, your family, your friends, they don't want to talk to you anymore, they don't invite you anymore, and they keep you at a distance, they alienate you, then, of course, I know for some people it's even dangerous for them. For me, it wasn't. No one was going to go out there and try and get rid of me just because of my life decision. But I know for some people, it's actually dangerous for them if they try to assert some kind of independence. So I would say for people who are in a situation that's dangerous, that don't do things on your own. You need to quietly get around you allies. You need to get in touch with organizations who have actual power and who are practically able to support you with your decisions. Because again, it's easy, even from our Western individualistic brainwashing, we would say, again, you got to be strong and, go your way and stand up and you can do it. And it's like, well, all of this ideology comes from a culture where people are not at risk of being killed because of making their decisions. So in other cultures, it's not as easy. And so young people who want to try to find a new path, and rebuild their life, and that's maybe going to go against what the family's doing, need to get allies around them and need to find a safe place, a safe organization that they can go to, so that when they make that decision, the family can see that they have got backup.
But there are a lot of people who are unaware. First of all, awareness is not a very big thing over here. A lot of people are unaware. Any suggestions for these people who does not have access to anything at all?
Yeah. If you don't have access to anything, it's difficult. Obviously, if there's no access to actual organizations, then we need to raise the awareness, so at least they can have some friends, have a place to go to. That's what they need to find out. I mean, even if it's, there are many stories, global stories, even of people who were in danger, and it would be a neighbor who would give them a safe place to stay. This is why we have reports of people going missing in society. In a lot of societies, what is the safest thing for them to do is literally just to go missing. They will just...
No, because actually, being
go overnight.
On my personal experience, I've met a lot of people around me, because I have, a relation to the urban areas as well. So I have people around me who are not in touch with anything. They are like, okay, this is my life, I have to tolerate everything. They are tolerating every torture, everything, which seems very impossible to me, or even if you connect to them, it will seem impossible to you as well. But then again, I cannot suggest anything to them because they are not aware at all.
Right.
What can we do for that? Any suggestions?
I've been told in the past that we should turn to the ulama, the scholars should, through the authority of the scholars, they should be addressing this issue. Our scholars are very overburdened already. Yes, we should go to the scholars, not saying we should kind of act without some kind of correct authority. At the same time, there's too many problems for the handful of scholars that we've got for everything to be dealt with by the handful of people that are available to talk to. So we need to start to build those networks. We need to start to raise that awareness. If there isn't that awareness, then that's the level that we need to start to work at. Maybe it's too early to say to someone, get out of your family home if it's dangerous for you to escape the way you're being treated. It's that's kind of jumping a step ahead. Primarily, we need to help where we can to raise the awareness and to even raise funds for there to be safe places for people to go to. So networks need to be established. Right. I'm thinking way back of the Sokoto Caliphate that was set up in what is now Nigeria in the early 19th century, and what the women of that caliphate, so that was Uthman Danfodio who set up that so-called caliphate. And the women of that caliphate were very active. What they used to do, they would be trained as teachers, and they would be sent out into the countryside, because of course people were living in isolated villages away from the main cities in the area. And so the women would be sent out as a team to different villages to educate other women in their Islamic rights, the correct behavior, and the correct social practice. I think, unfortunately, we see the priority by governments is to fund nuclear weapons, to fund arms, to fund armies, and defense, but not to fund education. And this is a global phenomenon that Muslim societies, their education has been neglected for decades and decades and decades. And they have been left to just struggle on their own, to kind of almost living, not even, hardly living. So it's a huge problem that needs to be dealt with, and we need to petition to get funds for education and to establish networks that can go out and start to talk to people and educate them.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. So I just wanted to say I am a single mom and I'm a survivor of domestic abuse. And I feel like to a certain extent it could have been avoided if there was some sort of pre-marriage counseling. So could you shed a little bit of light on that? Like pre-marriage counseling for me and for my ex, because I didn't know that it wasn't my fault even after 8 years of being married. And so could you shed a little bit of light about how important it is for there to be counseling before anybody gets married? Because I feel like people just jump into marriage without thinking about it.
I think we all, Western youth and Muslim youth, everybody needs to be told. Nobody's told, like, this is what it's going to be. These are some of the challenges you're going to face when you're married, or and these are some of the things that can happen. No one is told. It's just, you're just expected again to kind of get on with it. I mean, likewise, my mother's generation, I mean, she went to a girls' school. She was one of 4 sisters. There was no conversation about personality disorders, how marriages can go wrong, what's your fault, what's not your fault, nothing. So, and it's still like this today. So there needs to be, boys and girls need to be raised from a young age about how to be a wife, how to be a husband, how to deal with your emotions, how to deal with each other. And I mean, it's just a drop in the ocean at the moment in terms of how this is being addressed. Yeah, we need a lot more in terms of education.
Yes. Okay, so thank you so much, Sister Rebecca.
I think at this time I just say thank you so much for inviting me, and it's been really nice to meet everybody, especially like we're all connecting in different countries, and praying for everyone's success and everyone who watches this video. Inshallah, I pray for their success as well, inshallah, in this life and the next.
Inshallah. Thank you again. Once again, I personally, like I said at the start of this call, I'm super passionate about learning about different cultures, so I'm already thinking about our next conversation.
Right.
So thank you again. On behalf of the Hausla team, we loved having you. We will, inshallah, have you again in the future. And we as well are extending our du'as to you and your family and all your loved ones. And inshallah, may all of us get success and guidance in the dunya and the hereafter.
Thank you. Thank